Hello, I'm Holly Sexton, Public Relations and Financial Education Professional for Abound Credit Union, and welcome to our channel. Please like this video and click the subscribe button to see fresh videos from Abound in the future. Why? So you can make more possible for yourself and your family. So let's get started. Let's introduce the team from Abound Credit Union. Let's start with Leslie. Leslie, tell everybody, please, your job title and how long you've been with the credit union.
Hi, I'm Leslie Johnson. I am a learning coordinator here at Abound, and I've been here a little over 2 years.
Thanks so much for joining us. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Holly. My name is Rachel Hoskins. I am our application specialist here at Abound, and I am going on my 6th year here at the credit union.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Next up is Lauren Nix. Hi, Lauren. Lauren, I can't hear you.
Let's try that again now that I'm unmuted. My name is Lauren Nix. I have been with the credit union for about 2.5 years, and I'm over our payments team and our card services team.
Welcome. Next up is John Jay.
Systems administrator here at Abound, and I'm also going on my 6th year, but with COVID it seems a lot longer. So
I can feel that. I think everybody in this room can. Shout out to Allie. Allie is our wonderful behind the scenes person taking care of our videography for our YouTube channel. So hi, Allie.
Hello, everyone.
And let's see, we'll talk to Suzanne in a minute. Did I miss anybody? Mark's here. Mark Philpott.
Hello, Mark Philpott, financial advisor with Abound, and 2021 is my 2nd year with the credit union.
Awesome. Well, welcome. And I think that's everybody. If I missed you, I may not be able to see you at the bottom of my screen. Make sure to unmute and tell everybody you're here. Going once, going twice. All right, we'll get started. So the Abound YouTube team is here today with Suzanne to talk about how we can demystify budgeting, make it a whole lot easier, and help us reach our goals by paying off our debt sooner. So take it away, Suzanne. Everybody round of applause.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hi, everybody. I am Suzanne Booth. I am the Director of Learning and Development here for Abound Credit Union. And I've been with the credit union for nearly a decade now. So it has gone by, but to John's point, the last year has certainly gone by a little slower than all the others. I'm so excited to be here today talking about budgeting and personal finance. Always a good topic when we're coming out of the holidays, and probably a good topic with COVID. So we're going to dive right in today and start talking about it. The starting point when we're talking about budgeting, though, is how that budget should be divided, right? There's obviously a lot of things to consider. And so we're just going to spend some time today pulling back those myths that Holly mentioned and figuring out how you can even get a handle on this thing called budgeting, because sometimes it's hard. So let's go ahead and get started. Believe it or not, a good place to start with budgeting is savings. Anybody believe that? Anybody with us? I got some head nods. Good, good. So it's good to put away a little bit in savings because emergencies happen, crisis happens, right? You can put a little bit in savings, you have a safety net, and you've got something to fall back on. But there's two dynamics to look at with the savings. So you've got your short term, which are those emergencies, those crises, and then the longer term, which would be, you know, that trip to the Bahamas that you want to take. Or maybe you're putting some in your savings long term, so you can then take it and invest it down the road. So different options, different things to consider, but many experts will recommend 10 to 20% of your income going in that rainy day fund. Anybody have any thoughts or anything to share on the savings for the starting point with that? Any struggles with that? Anybody love doing that?
3 to 6 months worth of it's usually the recommendation to have, and that depends on whether it's a 1-earner family or a 2-earner family. But having that put away is important. I think COVID has taught us that because, you know, employment, while we all expect it to be continuous, things do happen. So it's important to have that put away.
I agree, and I will add to that, Suzanne, it will not happen unless you have a plan. That's all I have to say about that.
Absolutely. That is, I love that, Holly, because for sure. And it's almost like savings is easy to say that you don't need, right? Like, I can't really do it. So it's easy to pull that one out, but it's so important. I like to think it's like learning and development of the budget, if you will. So important for sure. All right, let's move on to the next slide then. So after we've got a handle on the savings, something else that really needs to be budgeted for is your transportation, right? How are you going to get to that job to put the money in the savings if you don't budget in transportation? So 15 to 20% of what you're bringing home should probably be considered for transportation. Of course, depending on where you live, maybe there's public transportation that you take advantage of. Maybe you've got your own vehicle. Transportation encompasses gasoline, maintenance, insurance, bus pass, all of that, everything that can go towards the transportation, car washes if you want your car to be clean. But all of that needs to come from that portion of your budget. And then the next stop on budgeting is debt. So let's spend a few minutes and talk about that. I envy anyone on this call who doesn't have any debt. I'll be honest, we're working really, really hard in my house to get rid of debt because we're not quite as young as we used to be. And we are at a point, believe it or not, where we're starting to think about longer term investments and retirement. And so debt has got to go. So it's often suggested to shoot for a minimum of 10% per debt item. So that could add up depending on how many debt items you have, right? Any stories, anything anybody wants to share on their own experiences or suggestions or thoughts on how to get a good handle on that debt repayment?
Suzanne, I'll jump in here. We talked about savings earlier, and that is kind of one way that I've been able to pay off some of my debt a little bit faster. I actually have a savings account that is dedicated to that exact purpose. Every time I get paid, I drop a little bit of money in there outside of the normal payments I make on my car loan or my student loan payments. And then once I have an adequate amount, maybe to pay off something or to make an extra payment on it for a month, then I'll go ahead and transfer that over. And it usually helps me pay that credit off faster. I've actually had a lot of success this past year in paying off some of my smaller debts and then taking that payment and rolling it into some of the larger debts that I have and kind of snowballing that. So I use my savings to help me, but I also have it in my monthly budget, a set aside amount to go towards those payments that's a little bit extra than what I would normally pay on them as the minimum amount.
That's fantastic, Rachel. Thank you for sharing that. And you know what? That actually makes me think it's kind of silly, but one thing that I love about our online banking is that you can give nicknames to your accounts. And so that savings account that you're using, maybe it's a secondary or a third savings account that you have open to hold that debt. It can just be like buy debt. You can name it whatever you want, but I love that. And good for you, Rachel. That's fantastic. We actually last April refinanced our mortgage, and by doing that, we were able to make it a shorter term and also cut our payment way down because it turns out we had a lot of equity in our home. And so that was fabulous. And now my mortgage feels more like an auto loan payment instead of a home payment, which I like, although I don't like the auto loan payments. So one of those will be gone in a couple months. I'm really excited about that too. So yeah, if you can do a minimum of 10%, you can take the Rachel path and double down on that. Then you'll cut that debt, whether it be a line of credit, credit card, student loan, mortgage, auto loans, whatever. You'll cut that out a lot quicker for sure. Thank you, Rachel. Again, that's great. And then of course we need to eat, right? So we have to budget for that. And when we talk about eating, it's important to remember that we don't mean going out to dinner with your best friends every other week. If you do that, that's great. That's not part of your eating budget. That's part of your fun budget, right? That's part of the discretionary spending. Your food budget should be groceries, cleaning supplies for your home, personal care items. Basically, the $100 I drop every time I go into Target. That is part of my food budget, even though I'm not eating my shampoo and my makeup. Family needs.
Wait. You only spend $100 in Target. I'm calling Suzanne out right now. Keep it real. All right.
You know
I know
what?
it's over $100. It is for me anyway.
It's after so many fights at the $200 mark, I was able to cut it back a little bit for the sake of my marriage. But all of that stuff, the personal care items, because for some reason I could spend so much money on personal care items. There's so many options. Do you want your hair to smell like apples or coconut? Like maybe I want both. So budget for that, and then you don't go too crazy at Target. That's the lesson here. But the groceries, the family care, the pet care, all of that stuff should be budgeted into your food budget, believe it or not. So maybe we don't call it food, but we call it life. But estimate about 20% for that. So that way you can keep it safe and manageable. And then just avoid Target. And then our next stop is the best part of the budget for a lot of people. It's the one I just mentioned. It's the discretionary. So it's your fun budget line. It's important to plan to have the fun, because if you don't and you try to stick to a strict, rigid schedule and there's no fun budgeted in there, what's going to happen? After a few months of no fun, you're going to go fun bananas. Yep.
For real. Yeah, it's just like depriving yourself of nutritious food. After a while, if you're cutting your calories too low, same thing with your budget. If you're not putting money aside to have fun with, you're going to go nuts at some point. So
Yeah.
plan, that's my favorite. Discretionary fund, this is my favorite part of the whole budget. Just saying.
And I love, Holly, that illustration, because to me, I think it really is like doing a hardcore diet. And you're depriving yourself. And then you're like, I need every board game that has come out in the last year, because I am about to get 5 bottles of wine and go crazy with my girlfriends. So doing that, like
Yeah,
budget for it.
Amazon. Yeah, I'm like, yes, exactly. I'm about to blow up Amazon. That's what's going to happen.
Oh, well, that's what happened at Christmas time.
Suzanne, I'd add, you put money away for fun items, but you can also look at free things you can do, or cheaper things you can do. You can go out to parks, things like that. When things start opening back up, there's probably going to be several special events or discounted things maybe to look for, and that'll help pad that discretionary fund a little bit more.
For sure. And John, I like that. And to that point, if you're able to put away 10 to 15% every month into a discretionary fund, even if you're not using it because we've been locked down, or you're not using it just because time's not allowing, or maybe you're not using it because you have free things that you're doing, or your sight's set on some big fun. You can't wait to go to Dave & Buster's and just win all the prizes. So I think it's good to plan, aside from just putting the money in, to actually plan what you're going to do with these funds, because I love that, John, and I'm all about free fun. So my kids know if it costs too much, that fund's not happening. We're going to keep it free, because I'd rather let this money sit there, and then when we go on vacation, then we splurge and we get the jet skis, or we, whatever, we do something fun with this saved but not used as much as we can. Very good tip. I like that. And then the last little piece that you should really be mindful of when you're budgeting is housing. So we cover transportation, but we got to keep the roof over our head, right? So whether it be mortgage or rent, you probably need some kind of insurance. You need to pay taxes. There's utility bills, everything that keeps the house running and that keeps that stability in the roof over your head should be a part of this. So a lot of people, and maintenance, sorry, I want to add that into the maintenance of the home. We've lived in our home for just over 10 years, and COVID presented a nice opportunity for us to do a lot of maintenance that we were overlooking. And so even though we haven't gone a lot of places in the last year, we have done a lot of maintenance on our house, and it worked out well because, again, we hadn't done a lot of it. So it was just kind of chilling in our budget. We had this big budget in there, and we were really thinking maybe we'll triple down on payments. We want to get this mortgage paid off. That's why we refinanced it. But the truth is we just built a new room in our basement. So now we have a man cave, and it's pretty and fresh, and we're doing all kinds of other paint and maintenance work. But that's all coming out of our housing budget. And so it's suggested to keep that about 30%, but not over 35% of your income. So if you're hitting higher than 35 on your housing needs, then it may be a good idea to rethink where you're living, because you don't want that to take too much of your income out. So maybe something smaller, more affordable, or in a different location could be good. But somewhere between that 30 and 35 mark should be what we're shooting for. Any thoughts on that? Any suggestions on how to make that line work better for you?
This is just speaking from personal experience. We had several things happen to my home in 2020, unfortunately, on top of COVID. And I think budgeting for emergency type things can also be put into the housing. Like, for example, we had standing water in my kitchen. Those types of things may not always fit in the savings portion of your budget, but they can be included in the housing portion of the budget. And I think that is just a lesson that I have learned just this past year, but just something to consider when you think about the 30%.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip, Leslie. Thank you for sharing that. Because to your point, you never know when like a faucet will break, and then there's going to be water everywhere, and you'll have to fix the faucet and the water and maybe even the floor. So yeah, I mean, that stuff happens. And I think if you can afford to factor that into your 30 to 35% for the housing, all the better. That's great. And then you can leave what's in your savings for long-term investment, stuff like that. We didn't have investment as a separate line item because a lot of people will just, after they get money in the savings, then take that and turn it over. But I suspect here in a slide or two, Mark will have some really good insight to share with us, even more on that. So yeah, to Leslie's point, you don't want to have any surprises that pop up with the housing. And so as much as you can budget for all of that, the better.
I agree.
So making a budget.
Suzanne,
We've
and
kind
I'll
of
just add
covered
one more
how
thing.
to divide it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one more thing about housing, and that is refinancing. Abound saw record numbers of refinancing. So that's a way that we can save big over that 15-year period or 30-year period, is to bring that loan rate way down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not kidding. When I said, last April we refinanced. We went from a 30-year to a 15-year and shorter term, and our payment was cut way down because of the equity we had. So absolutely, anytime you can refinance and maybe take the interest rate lower, shorten the term, make the payment lower, that is good all around, whether it be for a home or an automobile or anything else. If I can cut things down, let's do it. I told you I want my debt gone for sure. We've covered how to divide among your budget items and things to consider, and potential percents to look at for that. People who create a budget and stick with it have a better chance of spending less and saving more. And that's just a fact. If you're planning for things, you're more on top of them. You spend less, you save more. Because then when you go to Target, you have the willpower to say, no, I don't really need this. Things to consider when you make your budget, though. Notate the method that you're paying each bill or line item. So is it with a card? Is it check? Is it auto pay? And be considerate about that, because some places will charge you to pay by card or auto pay. Other places will charge you extra if you pay by check because they want you to do it auto pay. So don't be scared to ask questions when you're paying your bills and your utilities, and say, is there a way I can save money when I pay this? Will you charge me less? Well, I'll get some kind of kickback if I set you up to auto come off my card or by ACH instead of writing you a check every month. And then also just make smarter purchases. So that's where it comes down to that old needs versus wants. I have a teenager. We have this talk every day. Do you need it? Do you want it? So definitely think about that. And then also just prioritize your repayments. So Rachel shared a really good example of how she prioritizes, and she takes care of smaller ones. And then that amount she puts over here to a larger one. So that way she can accumulate up. That is definitely a method that has been shared by a lot of experts. Other experts will say pay off the highest debt first, and then you have more money to divide among the lower ones. I'll be honest, I think it is individual. I think it depends on you and what works for you and your life and your income and your spending and your needs. And maybe your wants a little bit, but I think it's definitely not a one size fits all. I think it's very custom, and it just depends on what works for Lauren or John or Leslie. So I think consider that too. And you might have to, kind of trial and error your budget a little bit you might have to try this method and it doesn't feel quite right, or you're not quite where you want to be, make some tweaks and adjustments, and then maybe try this one. And once you find what's right, budgeting is easier. And then you almost kind of look forward to it. Maybe like going to the gym and working out, you maybe kind of make it such a habit that it's not so bad to have to do after all. But for sure, making that budget and sticking with it will pay off huge.
Agreed. And Suzanne, what I hear over and over from people about this is that initially, if they give it about an hour, like an hour of time just to sit down and make their budget, then it's just maintenance from there. So say you want to reconcile all of your savings account, your checking account, et cetera, on the weekend, may take you 15 minutes. So if we really break it down like that initial time to create your budget template maybe takes an hour. And then after that, it's just super quick. And then a meeting, say with Mark, to talk about future investing may take an hour or so.
Yeah.
And then deciding what you want to do. So we're really not talking about a big time commitment here. We just have that initial creation, and then it's just maintenance after that. So super quick after that for maintenance.
You know what I love about that, Holly, is you're right. It doesn't take a lot of time to do it. And what's really cool is that there are endless resources available online, endless free resources. You can find spreadsheets, you can find free apps, you can find tips. You can find so much help online if you just do like a Google search of how to set a budgeting spreadsheet. There are so many free things out there, and it's kind of surprising all the options, because again, it's a very custom thing, right? So everybody and their brother has made a spreadsheet or some kind of template or some kind of document that somebody else can easily get, download, and plug and go. So you don't have to create anything super fancy. And I mean, I wouldn't. Somebody else already made it. Yeah, I'll take that. Thank you. Again, that free fun. Like if it's free and it's what I need, I'm all about that. So that's really cool, because it's not like you have to sit down and create the, whatever you're going to put your budget into. I promise you there's something out there that somebody has already made that you can just plug your own numbers into. But maybe if you like that, my husband is the spreadsheet king, so he would not use someone else's. Our spreadsheets for our home are well maintained and orderly because I don't do them. Something else to consider when we're talking budgeting is avoiding that quick fix. So I think it's important to take a few minutes to talk about that. You can easily fall behind in payments when your budgeting gets off track. Maybe it's that trip to Target. Maybe it's COVID. Maybe it's loss of income. There are so many things that can happen that can get your budgeting off track. And that's okay. It happens to everybody, and it will happen. Just work hard to get it back on track at that point. So the best tip to getting it back on track is not to fall for those quick fixes. That fast relief, that instant, this alone will take care of everything else, is coming at, a 30% interest rate. So is it really taking care of everything else in the long run? So some things that can distract your attempts to get back on track with budgeting would be pawn shops. Their pricing's not fair, and you're not going to get the value of whatever you're putting there, right? We all know that. Payday loans, title loans, they come with just astronomical interest rates, always, because that's how those businesses stay afloat. So you're really paying far more than what you would be if you just find a way to work out, or maybe, take advantage of a skip a pay option or things like that. Debt consolidation loans, these aren't necessarily a bad thing. They can be good. Just be careful. Monthly payments may be lower, but sometimes the terms are longer. Sometimes the interest rate is way higher, and it could cost more. So that's one where you just want to take the time to kind of calculate and figure, does this make the best sense for what I need for my end goal? Is this going to offer the best help versus not consolidating and having different loans? So just be mindful and smart with that. And then, of course, credit card and loan cash options. Newsflash, those typically are not free. They're coming with some extra cost attached to them. But in an emergency, obviously, you're going to do what you got to do. And Mark, I think you maybe have another suggestion too of something to avoid when we're talking about quick fixes that can really derail things.
Exactly. It's going to be similar to the payday loans type of thing as well, and that is the very tempting choice, but a terrible, usually terrible financial decision. Take money out of a 401k or an IRA in order to pay off a debt, especially when you're younger. You might say, "Well, I have this $2,500 in debt and 5,000 in a 401k, and I'm not retiring for years. It just makes sense to put it." It really doesn't, because when you pay the penalty for the early withdrawal and the taxes, it could be 30% at the least that you're losing to taxes and penalty. Could be higher depending on what your income bracket is. So it looks like it's free and easy money, but it's not. It's probably going to leave you a big tax bill later on that you're going to have to take care of. Plus, it's that future loss of retirement income in the future. So it's a very tempting choice, but like I said, not a very wise one to do that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mark. Agreed. And honestly, I'll be honest, I'm guilty of that myself. When I was in my mid 20s, I had a 401k with an employer. I was actually leaving them and going somewhere else, and I was like, whatever. I'm 24, like it's fine. But the taxes were painful. I would have much rather had that. I think it was $3,000. Just moved over to some other instrument instead of. I don't even know what I used it for. But yeah, don't do it. I agree for sure. As I mentioned earlier, there are so many tools out there to help with budgeting. So on the screen in the presentation here, there are a few. So www.nfcc.org is the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. And so it's a website. They offer free assistance and counseling. And so if you find yourself with a budgeting crisis and you're off track, this is a really good place, or even similar counseling options out there are good places to turn just to have somebody help counsel you, to give you advice and guidance before you attack your 401k or before you go to those quick fixes. Definitely take advantage of counseling and things out there, especially if they're free, just to see if they can help you. It's always good to get that advice. And then our next couple of slides here actually are two different documents. So one is a debt recovery worksheet. And so it's pretty neat. It breaks it down. We'll look at that. And then the other one is a spending plan worksheet. So that can help try to get your spending, if you have some issues with spending, kind of help manage that a little bit better. So the debt recovery activity is just a little spreadsheet that you put down current balance for different credit items or different debt items, your monthly payment, the due date, and then you'll track the amount paid and the date paid. So this can help you make it a habit, help you keep routine things going. But then you can also follow Rachel's guidance, and this can help you double down on payments or pay a little bit more. So when you're tracking it carefully and then you have a little extra money because you did what John did and you had free fund, you can maybe take some of that discretionary budget that you didn't use and put it towards debt and then track that. And I think putting it all there and looking at it makes it a little easier to digest, and it makes it a little easier to stay on top of, because then you know, oh my gosh, I'm this close to paying this off. Honestly, it's what I'm doing with my auto loan. It'll be paid off in 2 months, and I'm super excited. And literally, it took us half the time of the original term of the loan. And that's because my husband is a spreadsheet maker, and we kept our eyes on it all the time. So I'm fortunate and glad for that. But there's also just guidance on how best to make this work for you at the bottom. And then that takes us into the 4-step spending plan. So this one's pretty neat too. And so the 4-step spending plan, step 1 is to identify income. So you're just going to put down all of the income you have. So if you have that side hustle where you're selling golf clubs on the side and you're making money from that, put that on here. Obviously, that's going to fluctuate month to month. Put it on here though. Or if you make jewelry on the side and you're selling that, put that on here. Everything you're earning in addition to your 9 to 5, definitely put it on here. Count that, because you can make that work for you for sure. And then step 2 is expenses. So we started with our income. Now we're going to focus on our expenses. And to Holly's point, maybe sit down and give this an hour and just list out every expense you can think of. Cell phone. If you know you go to Target once a month, put that down as an expense. If you know it's going to happen, budget for that stuff, especially if you're Suzanne and you go into Target, you have to spend $80 in there. I don't make the rules. That's Target. I don't know. It's a minimum of $80 or they don't let you out the door. So you need to budget that. But put everything down that you know for sure you're going to spend. So you've got your income. Step 2 is your expenses that you know and plan for. And then part 3 is just comparing those, right? So you're going to do a little bit of math, you're going to compare them. And what I like about it is step 4. So step 4 of this worksheet is change habits. So that's where I need to put down that I should probably break up with Target a little bit. Change those habits to meet your goals. Change those habits to make that budget work. Take an hour and a half, sit down on a Saturday. If you have a partner or spouse that you need to sit down and talk with, do that and be really honest and be real. And then you're going to find yourself at the starting point of how to make a budget really work for you, for sure. Any thoughts on that? Anybody have their own spending plan or suggestions that they do?
I want to jump in. Sorry. The last sheet that you did, I would just say if you're going to sit down and fill that out, people just be realistic. If you try to fudge the numbers any, or say, oh well, no, I can do this, or I can maybe do this, a lot of the times you're just setting yourself up for failure. Be realistic with what you're doing and paying, and then you can adjust that over time to get to where you want it to be.
Yeah, that's great, John. I agree. I think you definitely need to be honest and realistic in that. And so that's where like changing the habits, I'll just be realistic. I'll go back to Target. I know I keep bringing it up. Like I have no self-control in there because they put things on clearance and I want it. So I just need to not go in there. And sometimes I do that. I'll go a month and not go in there. And then, after I've let my discretionary build up a little bit, I'm like, bye.
Or you could phone a friend, or like take Rachel or take somebody with you and be like, okay, I need some accountability here. Yeah, Leslie's like, yeah, take a friend. That can make a huge difference. Or call a friend. I'm sitting in the parking lot.
Yes, Holly, your must-be dial. You're my in case of emergency when I'm
Stop
driving
me
by.
before I spend again.
Yes.
I was gonna mention too, I think like kind of what Suzanne said, it is so important that you actually take the time and write it out, because sometimes you don't even realize the different things that you pay just because it is so routine that it actually writing it out by the end of your list, you're probably like, goodness, I didn't realize I had so many things that I had to pay on. And I think that makes it more realistic, like John was saying, actually taking the time to see where your money is going and how you should budget.
Yeah, I can tell you when it comes to grocery shopping, that point exactly, Leslie, is true for me. If I have a list and I've made a menu for the week and I have a list of exactly what I need for that menu, I spend so much less than if I just go into the grocery store, like, I don't know, the house needs food. And then like a cart and a half later, and it's looking like a Jenga game, I have spent way more than I would have if I knew for sure exactly what I needed to make these meals that we've pre-planned. So same thing with the overall budget, right? Put it out there, look at it, and it just makes it so much easier to see literally where things need to go and what you're doing.
And Suzanne, just to kind of add on the change in the habits part, and being accountable, looking at the purchases that you're making. One of the things that me and my husband recently did is we sat down and we're like, we should be able to put more money in our savings account. What is going on? And we realized that during the pandemic, we have gotten so comfortable with online ordering. So ordering from Sam's Club, ordering from Amazon, just because it's so convenient that sometimes it was hard to really realize the difference between that need and want. So we had to change our habit to say, okay, my need is something that I need for my house right now or for my family that I am willing to get in my car and go drive and get versus hopping on the app. So like our habit to change was we remove those apps off of our phone so that we're making ourselves go and get that need. And we know that that's a need.
Good for you, Lauren. That's good. Good on that assessment and then like taking the action immediately. That's really, really good. And to that point, that actually reminds me something else that is a trap that I feel like a lot of people have probably fallen into in the last year because of COVID, is food orders, right? Grubhub, all of them, all of those food delivery services, they come at a fee. So is it really worth buying that Panda Express if one meal is going to cost you $35 after the fee, the delivery, the tip, after all of that? Does it make sense when I could have just bought my own stuff to make it, or if I could have just driven there myself? So yeah, for sure there's always more expense than people realize when we stay on our couch and do our shopping or just wait for things to be delivered.
Suzanne, for that one-on-one, or when I have a one-on-one counseling session with somebody, that's one thing we talk about is those leaks. So it may be food delivery and regularly getting food delivered. It's okay occasionally, but not all the time. It's a sometimes treat. And the other thing is channels or subscriptions. Like you may have a makeup subscription that you're part of, or a shoe or fashion, or say you're part of the $5 shave club, the man shave club. You may have these coming out automatically, and if you don't have a budget, you have no idea, and you forget that it's coming out. The other could be Hulu. It could be Disney Plus. It could be all these a la carte channels. And so we think we're saving money by not paying cable, but actually we're paying more by adding all these channels in and not forgetting to just turn them off and on as we use them every month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to that point, bringing it full circle here, Holly, is that when you forget that you have that Ipsy subscription or that Target bag subscription or whatever, the Man's Shade Club subscription, if you don't put that into your budget and you forget about it, that can wreak some havoc. That can cause some issues, especially with the cable and the Hulu and Netflix and all of those things. Or, so many people working from home. We've got two grown-ups working from home all day, every day in my house. One of them has the TV on all day and the other one listens to music. So Spotify, it's nice not having those commercials. Are we considering what we're paying for that? Do I need that? Or could I sit through an advertisement? So definitely things to consider and look at when you're making that budget plan, for sure. All right. Well, thank you all very much. This was a good conversation. I feel like I should maybe sit down and review the spreadsheet and look over our budget some more. It kind of gets me a little excited to make some changes and to see what we can do with it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can attest that once we start watching these videos and sharing the information and preparing presentations, that it gets into our heart and it gets into our head. And as John said, we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. And I'll tell you, it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. The first time it hurts a little bit, it catches some hair. And then after that, it's all good. And you can feel a sense of accomplishment and a sense of a pride every month, and knowing, like what Rachel said, that you're allocating those paychecks toward your dreams and your goals rather than just getting the paycheck and it already being spent before you get it.
Yeah.
So very exciting stuff. Thank you, Suzanne. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks all of you YouTube team for joining us. And thank you, viewer. We appreciate you. Please feel free to contact our awesome Abound team members. You can also email me, hmsexton@aboundcu.com. And you can also use our financial education lessons and tools for free. You can check them out on the website, aboundcu.com. You can also do them from your phone. If you're waiting in car rider line, you're waiting at Kroger to pick up your food, whatever you're doing, 5 minutes is all it takes. You can go on your phone to aboundcu.com and do one of those financial education modules for free. So spread the word about that. If you are not a member and you'd like to learn more, please visit a branch, or you can join on our website, as I mentioned, and share with an Abound team member that you participated in one of our YouTube experiences or our financial education programs. And one more thing, like this video and subscribe so you can see fresh videos from Abound in the future. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.